let's go over some stuff, guys. Let's go over some stuff. You know, a lot of them were reporting like, oh, well, the Xbox 360 sold 64,000 copies of Bayonetta 1 in Japan in its debut. Of course, they didn't mention, oh yeah, some of them did, but a lot of them didn't mention, oh yeah, it tracked more days. But you could follow that up a little bit. They try to make it seem so bad. Well, the Wii U's launch was so bad on one day. The Bayonetta on the Xbox 360 hasn't sold more than 90,000 units in Japan. 90,000 units. The lifetime to date numbers, why even bring the launch numbers? What does it matter? The game completely flopped in Japan. It sold 80,000, 80 or 89,000 units. Why don't you put that in there, their lifetime to date numbers? Yeah, because it diminishes your case for your day one sales arguments. That's why you don't put that in there. It diminishes it. It makes it look like, oh, well, yeah, day one sales, that doesn't matter, you know? Seriously, like it's like you could have added that, you know, Bayonetta on the Xbox 360 only sold lifetime to date, only sold 89,000, 90,000 units. We all know Bayonetta 2 is going to pass up 90,000 units in Japan. Once holiday hits, people are going to buy it. Wii U games tend to sell. They have legs. They'll go for a little bit longer. Bayonetta 2 is going to sell, it's going to continue selling 10,000 units, 12,000 units, 6,000 units. And then when Christmas hits, it's going to sell upward of 60,000 units or maybe even more. It's just like Super Mario 3D World, but we'll get into that, So it's going to smoke the lifetime to date numbers of the Xbox. Hell, it's already almost halfway there. And on 1 day of sales, they don't put that stuff in there because it takes that stuff. They're taking it out of context and they don't want that to be broken to fit their agenda. So those websites won't mention the lifetime to date sales of the Xbox 360. They just, oh, well, day one, it did better. Now, how about lifetime, buddy? Yeah, crap. Like not very good. I mean, you even go to the PS3. None of them mentioned, oh, yeah, the PS3 had almost 2 million more, 1 million more sales than the Wii U. It was launched in 2009. In 2009, guys. That was 3 years after the PS3 launched. There was a bigger install base. So yeah, naturally, it's going to have more, obviously, but it's just day one sales. The lifetime to date numbers for the PS3 in Japan are around 210,000. So right after those day one sales, it racked up about another 70,000 or so, 80,000 maybe, and it was done. But they have to push though, day one, because America, for some reason, the reporters here, they think day one or they think week one sales mean everything. It's like, oh, well, week one, they go crazy. It's ridiculous. They put everything out of context. And like I said, this isn't even about damage control. This is garbage journalism control. And that's why I said I'm not talking, if you just joined me because I've seen more people have come, I'm not talking about YouTubers. If you're a YouTuber and you talked about Bayonetta sales and you put your opinion out there, this is not directed towards you. This is to professional journalists who are taking things out of context and who are supposed to be minimizing harm. The SPJ, IGN and Kotaku and these websites have been doing the same thing. And it tells me from the SPJ to call them out. They're not minimizing harm when they do these articles. Heck, there was an article on Kotaku basically outright bashing Hideki Kamiya for not knowing anything about the PC market. They didn't even ask him. They just said, oh, well, they just took one quote, took it out of context and wrote an article about it. It's ridiculous. Let's keep going because I have some more facts, guys. So like I said, if you're just joining, Platinum, I'll summarize what I just talked about. Bayonetta 2 sold 7 times what the Wonderful 101 did. Everybody, when the Wonderful 101 came out, said that it was a horrible, dismal, horrible launch. They said the same thing when Bayonetta 2 came out, horrible, dismal, but yet it sold 7 times what it did on 1 day of sales. Okay? So let's keep on taking a look here. Platinum Games sells far more copies of their games in North America than they do in Japan. Mad World on the Wii is a classic example of this. Mad World was an exclusive for the Wii. That game sold around 20,000 units in Japan lifetime to date. Day one sales of Mad World on the Wii were actually lower than the Wonderful 101. Day one sales of Mad World, that game sold 3,891 units, right around 4,000. Lower than the Wonderful 101, 20,000 lifetime. But it sold over 700,000 copies total. Over 700,000. All those were in North America and Europe because Platinum Games, that's where they developed for. So I'm just repeating stuff for the people who just came in here. Platinum Games, they're in Japan, but that doesn't mean you treat them like, oh, they're supposed to sell their products in Japan because you guys don't do that for North American developers. So why are you doing that for Platinum Games? Just because they're in Japan, that doesn't mean anything. Their style of game suits more for the American audience. You know what I'm saying? It suits more for those type of people. So that's the reason why I'm bringing this up. These websites aren't talking about that. They're not looking at the history of Platinum Games' titles and saying, you know what? These developers actually sell a lot more in North America than they do in Europe. Or sorry, a lot more in North America than they do in Japan, or a lot more in Europe than they do in Japan. Maybe these sales numbers don't really mean much, because we can go through, and if any of you guys see something here, let me know if you guys saw an article on this. But we're looking at the PS4's launch game. So we're looking at the PS4 and what the PS4 has done. Call of Duty, the first day for this is the PS4 launch. Call of Duty Ghosts, 12,000 units sold, a little bit over 12,800. FIFA 14, 9,142 week one sales or launch sales. Diablo 3, 17,895 sales, and this is for the PS4. Battlefield, 25,000 units. Killzone Shadowfall, 29,000 units. Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, 12,000 units. Infamous Second Son, 36,000 units. The Last of Us Remastered, 29,000 units. Need for Speed Rivals, 6,661 units. Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes, which is a big franchise, 95,232 units. And while that's more than Bayonetta, people were always saying, oh, well, when the journalists were saying that when Mario came out, it did horrible, it did dismal. It sold 99,000 units in its first week. They were saying it's horrible, it's dismal. This franchise is so much bigger. It should have sold more. How come we didn't get those same articles when Metal Gear came out in Japan? These same websites were giving Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes great review scores. Well, you can't say, oh, because it's a game lacking content. Oh, because your review score actually makes it like a good game. So therefore, they just don't report on it at all. Well, that Metal Gear Solid, whatever. It did what it did in Japan. Let's just not report on the media crate this week with Metal Gear. I didn't see any articles talk about Metal Gear bombed. I saw plenty of articles saying that Super Mario 3D World flopped. Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes was a disc release, guys. This wasn't a downloadable title only. This was a disc release. Konami was selling it as if it's a fully packaged game. Okay? There was websites defending this and saying, no, there's plenty of content. You just got to replay missions 10 times over. You'll get plenty of content out of there. So when it sells 95,000 units, where's the article saying that Metal Gear bombed on the PS4? Where's the article saying that Need for Speed Rivals bombed or Infamous Second Son bombed in Japan or dismal sales? Where's the article saying the Wolfenstein, The Order, 8,356 units? Where's that saying that it bombed? And I know what some of you guys are probably saying. Oh, well, those are American games. They never sell well in Japan. Same for Platinum Games developed titles. Same for Bayonetta. Same for Mad World. Same for Vanquish. Same for all of the games Platinum Games has put out. Who cares if they live in Japan? They might as well be an American developer. When it comes to sales, they sell games to American consumers. Yes, there's a little bit of an interest, a little bit in Japan, but for the most part, it's just like all these other Western games. So where are the articles saying that all of these games bombed? When Infamous Second Son came out in Japan, was there any articles? If you guys saw some from these major websites, please let me know. Put it in the question app. Say, oh, well, Francis, here's a link. They did say that Infamous Second Son bombed, or there's dismal sales. If Kotaku did that, or if any of these websites did that, please let me know. But what's the precedence of Bayonetta 2 over any of these games? Remember, we're talking about developers. Forget regions that they live in. Where do they sell their games the most? Everybody says, oh, well, these are for American consumers, or these are for Western consumers. Bayonetta is no different. Bayonetta 2 is no different. Bayonetta 2 sold better than all of these PS4 launch games.